Do you think a film set in the 1980s about immortals running around chopping off each other's heads with flashbacks to the Highlands of Scotland in the 16th century could lead to me learning the Welsh language, which is not spoken in Scotland? Well, it did, and as a Crutan, I was obsessed with this film and the series that it spawned. And it set off the kernel of a seed, interest in Celtic things. And this film, Highlander,
there can be only one,
has a cult following around the world that is astounding, and it keeps going. It's amazing that it's persisted so long since, this is almost 40 years old, this film. And that it was set in 1985 going into 1986 is important for the time because this was toward the end of the Cold War, and that's relevant, you'll see, in that liberal democracy, freedom, was beginning to whittle away at this oppressive regime across Eurasia and the darkness of communism. And you'll see why that's relevant for later. The age of this is key. This is a film of its age. It's about immortals gathering to New York in the Gathering, where the few that are left, are fighting each other to the death to cut off each other's heads. I know. Over the prize, meaning when these immortals kill each other, they experience a quickening, where they absorb the energy and strength and powers of the other immortal. And then the one who's left standing at the end basically gets the strength and abilities of all those immortals that have ever been killed. I know if they die, they're not exactly immortal, are they? But come on, it's a science fiction film from the 80s that I liked as a small Crutan. Yeah? Let's get into the film. Oh, by the way, because of the copyright stuff that's probably going to happen on this video, I'm probably not going to make much money. So buy me a coffee, donate via Patreon, or tap the button down there, super like, help me keep the channel going. I told one of you that I would make this video, so I'm making this video. Let's get into the story. I'm Benjamin, and we'll see you at the end. Connor is the hero, this guy. The Kurgan is the monster-like bad guy, this guy. And after retelling Connor's history in a series of flashbacks to the Highlands of Scotland, he kills the monster bad guy, the Kurgan, saves his woman, and gets the prize. What could be better than a simple hero wins the day story, right? But actually, there's a lot going on here under the surface. Let's dig in. The film begins at a fight venue in Madison Square Garden, New York, where we immediately see Connor MacLeod having flashbacks to the Highlands of Scotland in the early 16th century. And who could blame you for being confused? What do the Scottish Highlands in the 1530s and 1980s New York have to do with one another? But there is a direct link, and I hope I can convince you of that in this video. There is a link between the birth of the Scottish Renaissance, with its ideas of liberalism and humanism, with 1980s New York high-octane, neoliberal capitalism. But for the time being, our hero Connor is driven out of his village in the Highlands for not fitting in with the norms of a pre-Enlightenment society at the precise moment when Scottish society began to change, to open up to classical education and humanism. Connor represents change, new ideas, opening up, leaving behind medieval ideas of life and death, and defying ancient concept of death and Satan. He is driven out because the Kurgan killed him in a battle with a neighboring clan, and nearly took his head, but Connor was saved and came back to life, with his clan unable to understand why. If someone comes back to life after battle, it's gonna spook me too, even with everything we know today. And back then, the supernatural was a part of everyday life, so these people were terrified of their clansman Connor. He is nearly burned at the stake, which happened to many early liberal thinkers in the 16th century. At the time, the Reformation was coming up from the South, changing ideas around religion and personal relationships with extended families like clans forever. 5 years later, Ramirez appears, Sean Connery, one of my favorite actors ever. Having searched out Connor to train him to fight the Kurgan and save humanity from darkness and ignorance. That Ramirez is an Egyptian is important. He is opening up Connor to the world and teaches him that crossing the sea or through water, he walks underneath a law. He is safe to cross through, water to other lands, to explore beyond what he knew. However, he stays in Scotland for a while to love Heather, his first love. The Kurgan kills Ramirez whilst Connor is away, and Connor takes his katana, a symbol of the east of Japan, and through his teacher, of Egypt and Spain, as his own weapon of choice. Back in New York of the 1980s, America is a superpower built upon the ideas of the Scottish Enlightenment and liberalism. As immortals gather in New York for the gathering, an assembly of immortals that will fight each other to the death for the prize, Connor meets with an old friend, an African immortal named Sunda. And this meeting is important because the ideas of Renaissance humanism and Enlightenment liberalism are being shown in the friends and tools that Connor MacLeod has collected together in his own aesthetic and style, which are in direct opposition to the Kurgan and his dark anti-Enlightenment view of the world, where brute force and strength determine all, not free will and friendship. Connor's katana is passed down through his Egyptian mentor. Japan, the origin of this sword, is a post-war liberal democracy and an ally of the United States and the West, ideologically. But his car is equally telling. He drives a 1955 Porsche 356A Speedster, which was the car built by a former Nazi war machine company after it had, through the fire of war, been rebeaten into shape from National Socialism into a German symbol of pro-market, liberal democracy and freedom. Both of his greatest tools are from nations conquered by liberalism and reshaped by the pro-market West into our Western allies siding with us in the fight against the evils of Eurasian Marxism. The Kurgan, on the other hand, apparently drives whatever beat-up old sedan he can steal, and he has no clear style of car. Boxy, big, clunky, this lack of style or class is in itself very Soviet Union. His sword is even more so. His blade is assembled in parts that are big, chunky, and industrial looking. It's a mechanical device rather than an elegant art. It's brutal. It's brutalist. It's Stalinist in its form, and sadistic, whereas Connor's blade is elegant and smooth, expressing art, beauty, and love of nature itself, as opposed to the anti-natural, industrial blade of the Kurgan. These two immortals here could not be more different in their tools and their aesthetic. The Kurgan, 7 feet tall with scars around his neck, and Connor, a slender, lean, hair dressed like a Scotsman, even though he is French, but you get the point. But where all immortals are similar is seen in how they die. The head being severed from the body is the only way they can die. And if this film is a metaphor for how Western liberalism is locked in a struggle against Eurasian Marxism to rule the world in the late 20th century, the Kurgan, killing Connor's African friend Sunda, goes further into the global struggle against Marxist evil. A Vietnam War veteran bystander with a car full of automatic weapons and guns fails to kill Kurgan. The Kurgan butchers him with his sword up into the air. This could clearly show liberal democracy and freedom being under threat in South Asia and Africa, that the evil is striking back against Scottish Enlightenment liberalism by attacking our democratic allies in an attempt to bring us down into a hell where the pro-market West has been defeated by a dark Eurasian evil. The war veteran's t-shirt even says, "Hey Moscow, up yours," and he is killed by the Kurgan, a symbol of Russian brutality, prehistoric ruthlessness, before he can absorb Sunda's African quickening. The Third World risk being lost to darkness, to industrial communism, our enemies, if Connor with his ideas of freedom and the Scottish Enlightenment cannot defeat him. Now I hope that you're not taking this too seriously. I mean, immortals running around in New York in the 1980s cutting off each other's heads. Right, but there is one thing that is astounding about this film which I can't show you in images. It's the music. The soundtrack and the score is a mixture of Queen, sung by Freddie Mercury, top notch, with a few other compositions, and this is so fitting for this film because Freddie Mercury is part of the essence of that epoch, that era in the 70s, 80s, just before the Cold War ended, of freedom, of expression, the ideas that originally came out of that Scottish Enlightenment, peaking in our culture right at that moment in our history, and the fact that Freddie Mercury, who is the embodiment of those ideas in musician form, is able to sing for this soundtrack is monumental and adds to the weight of that ethos. In the lead up to our final battle, the woman Connor has been slowly falling for figures out his fake name, Russell Nash, was taken in 1945 from a dead newborn, and 1945 is no coincidence. In 1945, the West and our liberal Enlightenment values were reborn out of our victory over fascism, as a new cultural origin myth was created around humanism, internationalism, and pro-market capitalism. Rachel, his receptionist in his antique shop, was a little girl he found and saved in World War II from Nazis. The defeat of Nazis is not only the rebirth of the West, it is the remaking of Connor MacLeod and the allies, tools, and ideas that have created him, a symbol of liberal democracy and the enlightenment of the West, fighting against the darkness of Eurasian Marxism. But even with our victory over fascism in 1945, the entire world is not yet liberal Western democracy. Other immortal ideologies remain, and there can be only one.
There can be only one.
The heads of two immortals left standing represent two opposing ideas: the democratic, free, capitalist West in Connor MacLeod, and the tyrannies of Marxism and Eurasian authoritarianism in the Kurgan. The most famous line of the film is, "There can be only one." Either democratic Western liberalism or collectivist Marxism and tyranny. One of these two will rule the world. Fortunately for us, the hero saves the girl and the world by taking the Kurgan's head and winning the prize. In his quickening, the release of the Kurgan's energy into him upon his victory. He says he knows everything, he is everything. He experiences the world at once, all of it, liberal democracy, and the values of the Scottish Renaissance. And then the Enlightenment sweep over the world as Eurasian Marxist tyranny dies. Connor knows the thoughts of scientists and leaders around the world and can help them understand each other. It is the liberal spirit of democracy and Western victory over all the other ideologies, bringing us toward the end of the 20th century and the end of history, with the European Enlightenment's values reigning over all mankind in liberty. I don't usually make videos like this, so we'll see how it's done and look back and see if it's worth making anything else like this. If you liked it, let me know down in the comments. But next time, we'll get back to other languages or history and the main themes of this channel. Diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio, thank you very much for watching, and there can be only one channel like mine. Stay tuned.